The massive ships moved through space like silent hunters. The fleet had traveled for months to reach this small blue planet at the edge of an unremarkable star system. Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the third planet grow larger on his screens. "Another primitive world," he said to his second officer. "This should be easy." They had conquered 17 star systems in the past century. They were experts at this. Their technology was far beyond anything most species could imagine. Their weapons could destroy entire cities in seconds. Their armor could stop any primitive attack. Most importantly, they had never lost a war. Activated the scanning systems. Invisible beams swept across Earth, gathering information about everything on the surface. The computers worked quickly, analyzing what they found. Within hours, they had a complete picture of human civilization. "Commander, the initial scan is complete," reported officer. "You should see this data." Looked at the results and started laughing. The other officers gathered around, and soon they were all laughing too. "Look at this," pointed at the screen. "They still use chemical explosives for weapons. Chemical explosives. We stopped using those 3,000 years ago." "And they're flying machines," added another officer. "They burn fossil fuels to move through the air. How primitive can they get?" The data showed everything about human society. The computers had broken into human communication networks easily. They could see human news, human entertainment, human military files. Everything was open to them. "They fight each other constantly," observed. "Look at all these small wars happening at the same time. They cannot even unite their own species." "Sir, their average is only 75 years, reported. "Most of them die from diseases we cured ago." "And look at how they treat their planet," another officer said. "They are poisoning their own air and water. They are destroying the very world they live on." Shook his head in amazement. "I have never seen such a backward species. They are their own worst enemy." The scanning systems gathered more information. The computers analyzed human military capabilities, human technology levels, and human social structures. Every piece of data confirmed what they already believed. "Commander, should we call for the main invasion fleet?" asked. Thought for a moment. "No, that would be wasteful. These humans are clearly a Category 5 threat level." Category 5 was the lowest possible rating. It meant the enemy had no real ability to fight back. It meant the war would be over in days, maybe hours. "Prepare the surrender broadcast," ordered. "Send it to every communication device on their planet. Tell them they have 48 hours to surrender completely, or we will begin destroying their cities." "Sir, what if they refuse?" asked a young officer. The entire bridge crew burst into laughter again. The idea that these primitive humans might refuse was too funny to consider seriously. "Look at the data again," said when the laughter died down. "They cannot even work together to clean their own planet. They fight wars over pieces of land and ancient grudges. They waste enormous amounts of resources on weapons they use against each other. Do you really think they can organize a defense against us?" The computers had analyzed human psychology too. The reports showed that humans were motivated mainly by self-interest. They formed small groups based on geography, religion, or ethnicity. These groups often fought with each other. The idea that they could unite against an outside threat seemed impossible. "Besides," continued, "our previous studies show that all intelligent species behave the same way when faced with overwhelming force. They calculate their chances of survival. When they see that resistance means certain death, they surrender." This was true. In 17 star systems, the pattern was always the same. They would arrive with superior technology. They would demonstrate their power. The local species would resist briefly, realize they could not win, and surrender. It was logical. It was predictable. "Send the message," ordered. "Tell them we want complete surrender. All military forces must lay down their weapons. All governments must dissolve. All resistance must stop. If they comply, we will allow them to live as our subjects." The message was broadcast across Earth in every human language. The computers had learned all human languages in just a few hours. The message was simple and clear. "Citizens of Earth," the broadcast began, "we are the Empire. Your planet now belongs to us. You have 48 hours to surrender completely. If you resist, your cities will be destroyed. If you comply, you will be allowed to live under our rule. Choose wisely." On the bridge of the flagship, the officers watched human communication networks light up with activity. The humans were talking to each other frantically. Their leaders were holding emergency meetings. Their military forces were mobilizing. "Look how panicked they are," laughed one officer. "They know they cannot fight us." "Sir, their largest military powers are requesting communication with us," reported. "They want to negotiate." Nodded, this was exactly what he expected. "Tell them there will be no negotiations. They surrender completely or they face destruction. Those are the only options." The human responses came quickly. Some governments agreed to surrender immediately. Others asked for more time to convince their populations. A few demanded proof of power before they would consider surrender. "Prepare a demonstration," ordered. "Target their largest moon. One plasma blast should be enough to show them what our weapons can do." The weapons officer charged the main plasma cannon. The crew watched as the massive weapon powered up. When it fired, a beam of pure energy crossed the space between Earth and its moon in seconds. The blast created a new crater 50 kilometers wide. On Earth, every human with a telescope could see the new crater. The message was clear. They could destroy anything they wanted. "Sir, we are receiving many more surrender offers," reported. "Good," replied. "Begin landing operations tomorrow. This war is already over." The commander was satisfied. Another quick victory for the Empire. Soon this planet would be added to their collection, and its people would serve them faithfully. It was always the same story, and this time would be no different. The 48 hours ended, and the humans had not surrendered completely. Some governments had agreed to give up, but others were still resisting. Many human military units refused to lay down their weapons. Commander was not surprised. This happened sometimes. The primitive species would need a demonstration of real power before they understood their situation. "Begin the invasion," he ordered. "Target their major military bases first. Show them that resistance is pointless." The landing ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. Their energy shields glowed as they cut through the air. Human radar systems detected them immediately, but human weapons could not touch them. The first target was a large human military base in what the humans called North America. The ships approached the base from above. The human soldiers were ready for them. They had tanks, missiles, and aircraft prepared for battle. "Look at them," laughed Officer, watching the human preparations on his screen. "They think those primitive weapons can hurt us." The human missiles launched first. Dozens of them streaked toward the ships. The advanced alien shields absorbed the explosions like raindrops hitting a window. The missiles did no damage at all. "Return fire," ordered the ground commander. "Disable their weapons, but try not to kill too many. We need some of them alive to work for us." The plasma weapons fired down at the human base. Each blast destroyed entire buildings in seconds. The human tanks and aircraft were vaporized instantly. Within minutes, the entire base was ruins. But something strange happened. Instead of running away, the human soldiers who survived tried to help their wounded comrades. They carried injured humans to safety, even when more plasma blasts were falling around them. "Why are they not retreating?" asked the officer. "Their position is hopeless." "They are probably too scared to think clearly," replied the commander. "Primitive minds cannot handle this much stress." The invasion continued across the planet. Every major human military installation was attacked. The pattern was always the same. Human weapons were useless against technology. Human forces were destroyed quickly and completely. But the humans kept doing strange things. In one battle, a group of human soldiers stayed behind to cover the retreat of civilians, even though they knew they would die. In another battle, human medical personnel refused to abandon their wounded, even when their hospital was being bombed. Commander watched the reports with growing confusion. Why do they keep sacrificing themselves for others? It makes no strategic sense. They had studied many species during their conquests. Most intelligent beings followed logical patterns during war. They would fight when they could win. They would retreat when they could not win. They would surrender when defeat was certain. This was rational behavior. But humans seemed to ignore these rational calculations. They would fight hopeless battles to save others. They would give up their own safety to protect strangers. They would share their limited resources with people they had never met before. "Sir, we are receiving communication from the human city they call New York," reported. "They are requesting a temporary ceasefire to evacuate children and elderly citizens." "Tell them no," replied immediately. "If they wanted to save their people, they should have surrendered when we gave them the chance." But even as the attack on New York continued, the soldiers watched something that confused them. Human adults were forming lines to put children on evacuation vehicles. Parents were giving up their own seats to make room for other people's children. Some humans were walking back into dangerous areas to help elderly people who could not move quickly. "This behavior is inefficient," observed one officer. "They could evacuate more people if they focused on the strongest and healthiest individuals." "Perhaps their social structure is different from what we expected," suggested another officer. The strangest incident happened in what the humans called London. A transport ship had crashed in the city center after being hit by debris from a building collapse. The ship was damaged, but the crew inside was still alive. According to all military logic, the humans should have attacked the crashed ship. The crew was vulnerable, and capturing them could provide valuable information. Instead, something impossible happened. Human emergency workers approached the crashed ship. They brought medical supplies and rescue equipment. They were trying to help the injured crew. "Sir, this cannot be correct," reported the intelligence officer. "The humans are attempting to provide medical aid to our soldiers." Stared at the screen in disbelief. "Run the scan again. There must be an error." The scan confirmed what they were seeing. Human doctors and firefighters were working to free trapped soldiers from the wreckage. They were treating alien injuries with their primitive medical supplies. They were trying to save the lives of their enemies. "Have they gone insane?" asked. "We are destroying their civilization. Why would they help our wounded?" Had no answer. In 17 previous conquests, he had never seen anything like this. Enemy species might sometimes treat prisoners with basic courtesy, but they had never risked their own safety to save wounded invaders. The reports kept coming in from all across the planet. Humans were displaying the same incomprehensible behavior everywhere. They put the safety of others before their own safety. They shared food with strangers during the chaos. They organized rescue efforts for anyone who needed help, including enemy soldiers. "Commander, we are intercepting human communications," reported the intelligence officer. "You should hear this." The bridge speakers played a recording of human emergency services coordination. Human voices were calmly organizing rescue operations, medical supplies, and evacuation routes. They were working together with an efficiency that impressed even the. "These are the same humans who could not solve their environmental problems," said, "the same ones who were fighting each other just days ago. How are they suddenly so organized?" Was beginning to realize that the analysis of humanity had missed something important. These humans were not just primitive and chaotic. They had capabilities that only appeared during extreme situations. "Sir, our ground forces are reporting unusual resistance patterns," came another report. "The humans are not trying to win battles. They are trying to delay us long enough for others to escape." "What do you mean?" "Human military units are using suicide tactics, but not to kill our soldiers. They are destroying bridges, blocking roads, and creating obstacles to slow our advance. They are buying time for civilian evacuations." Looked at the tactical displays. The human strategy made no military sense at all. They were guaranteeing their own defeat in order to save people who were not even soldiers. "Sir, we have achieved total military superiority," reported the tactical officer. "Human resistance is minimal, but the population has not collapsed as predicted. They are still organizing, still helping each other, still fighting in small groups." For the first time since the invasion began, Commander felt uncertain. This was not following the usual pattern. These humans were supposed to be beaten and demoralized by now. Instead, they seemed to be becoming stronger and more united as the situation grew more desperate. "Continue the assault," he ordered, "but prepare a detailed report on human behavior patterns. I think we may need to revise our strategy." The message reached Admiral while he was inspecting the additions to the Empire on the other side of the galaxy. Commander's report was unusual, and unusual reports always got the Admiral's attention. "The humans are not behaving according to standard conquest patterns," the message said. "Request permission to call for additional forces and extend the timeline for complete subjugation." Admiral had served the Empire for over 400 years. He had personally overseen the conquest of 8 different star systems. He had never received a message like this one. "Prepare my ship," he ordered his staff. "I want to see this planet myself." The Admiral's flagship was the largest and most powerful vessel in the fleet. It could cross the galaxy in weeks instead of months. More importantly, it carried the most advanced analysis systems in the Empire. If there was something strange about these humans, the Admiral would find out what it was. When he arrived at Earth, Admiral immediately called for a complete briefing. Commander and his officers gathered in the war room to explain the situation. "Show me what makes these humans different," the Admiral said. "Sir, observe this tactical situation," activated the main screen. It showed a human military position that was completely surrounded by forces. These human soldiers have no hope of escape. They know they will die. Watch what they do. On the screen, the human soldiers were not preparing for a final desperate attack. Instead, they were helping civilian refugees escape through a hidden tunnel system. The soldiers stayed behind to guard the tunnels, knowing that forces would find and destroy them. "They are sacrificing themselves for people they do not even know," explained. "These civilians are not their families. They are not their friends. They are just other humans." Admiral watched carefully. He had seen many species make final stands before, but this was different. The humans were not fighting for glory or revenge. They were not trying to take enemies with them when they died. They were simply buying time for others to live. "Show me more examples," he ordered. The next recording showed a human city under bombardment. Plasma weapons were destroying buildings throughout the area. But instead of hiding in shelters, groups of humans were running into the damaged buildings to search for survivors. "Sir, those buildings could collapse at any moment," explained an officer. "The humans know this. They can see the structural damage, but they go inside anyway to look for trapped people." "Have they found anyone?" asked the Admiral. "Yes, sir. They have rescued hundreds of survivors this way, but they have also lost many rescuers when buildings collapsed." Admiral studied the data more carefully. The human rescue operations were not random or emotional. They were organized and efficient. The humans had systems for searching damaged buildings quickly and safely. They had medical teams ready to treat injuries. They had evacuation routes planned in advance. "These are not the actions of a primitive, chaotic species," he said quietly. Sir, there is something else you should see. Activated another screen. This one showed the crashed transport ship in London. Human medical teams have been working for 3 days to treat our wounded soldiers. The Admiral watched human doctors using their primitive equipment to help injured. The humans had to work slowly because alien physiology was unfamiliar to them, but they were learning quickly. They had already saved 2 lives. Have they questioned the wounded soldiers? Asked the Admiral. No, sir. They refuse to interrogate patients. They say it violates their medical principles. Admiral A was silent for a long moment. In 4 centuries of military service, he had never seen enemy forces provide medical care to invaders without expecting something in return. What do they want in exchange for this treatment? He asked. Nothing, sir. They refuse all offers of payment or prisoner exchanges. They say they are helping because the injured need help. The Admiral stood up and walked to the main observation window. Earth turned slowly below them, a blue and white sphere that looked peaceful from space. But he knew that down on the surface, a war was raging. Show me their communication networks, he ordered. The screens filled with human messages from across the planet. Admiral A had his translators convert everything to language so he could understand what the humans were saying to each other. Most of the messages were about organizing help for refugees, sharing information about safe evacuation routes, and coordinating relief supplies. Humans in areas that had not been attacked were sending food, medicine, and transportation to areas under invasion. Sir, look at this message cluster. One officer highlighted a section of communications. These humans live on a completely different continent from the fighting. They have no personal connection to the people they are helping, but they are organizing massive relief efforts anyway. Admiral A read through the messages carefully. Humans were voluntarily giving up their own resources to help strangers. They were opening their homes to refugees they had never met. They were driving hundreds of kilometers to deliver supplies to areas that might be attacked next. Why do they do this? He asked. What do they gain? We have analyzed their motivations extensively, replied the intelligence officer. We cannot find any rational explanation. They appear to help others simply because others need help. The Admiral had studied dozens of intelligent species during his career. All of them were driven by logical considerations: survival, territory, resources, status, or genetic advantage. But these humans seemed to be motivated by something else entirely. Show me their history, he commanded. I want to understand how this behavior developed. The computers brought up human historical records. Admiral A spent hours studying human wars, natural disasters, and social development. What he found disturbed him more than any military threat could have. Throughout their history, humans had consistently helped each other during disasters, even when those disasters were caused by human conflicts. They had ended wars temporarily to provide aid during earthquakes and floods. They had shared medical discoveries freely, even with enemy nations. They had created systems for helping refugees from any country, regardless of politics. This behavior is not new, he realized. It is not a reaction to our invasion. This is how they always behave. Sir, our psychological profiles show that human society is built around collective survival, explained the science officer. Their evolutionary development favored cooperation over individual strength. They succeeded as a species because they learned to take care of each other. Admiral A thought about this carefully. They had evolved differently. They had become the dominant species on there through individual strength and cunning. Cooperation was useful, but survival always came first. Commander, he said finally, have you observed any humans abandoning others to save themselves? Very few, sir. And when it does happen, other humans treat those individuals as outcasts. Their society punishes selfishness and rewards sacrifice. The admiral looked at the planet below again. For the first time in his long military career, he was beginning to wonder if they had encountered something they did not fully understand. "Continue the observation protocols," he ordered, "but halt all major offensive operations. I want to study this phenomenon more carefully before we proceed." Something about these humans was different, and Admiral needed to understand what it meant. Admiral spent the next several days studying everything the computers could gather about human civilization. He accessed their primitive data networks, their historical records, their literature, and their entertainment. What he discovered changed his understanding of warfare itself. The first thing he noticed was how humans talked about their own species. In every language, in every culture, they used the same word: humanity. It was not just a biological classification. It was a moral concept. To be human meant more than just being born on this planet. It meant treating others with compassion and dignity. "Computer, analyze human moral philosophy," he commanded. "Show me how they define ethical behavior." The results appeared on his personal screen. Human ethical systems were incredibly diverse, but they all shared common elements. Almost every human culture had developed some version of what they called the Golden Rule: treat others as you would want to be treated yourself. "Sir, this principle appears in every major human civilization," reported his science officer. "Even groups that had no contact with each other developed the same basic idea." Admiral found this fascinating. They had conquered species with many different moral systems. Some valued honor, others valued strength, and some valued knowledge. But none of them had made compassion for strangers a central principle of their society. "Show me examples of this principle in action," he ordered. The computer pulled up thousands of examples from human history. During their largest war, enemy soldiers had stopped fighting on certain days to exchange food and medical supplies. When natural disasters struck, humans from enemy nations would send aid immediately. When diseases spread, human scientists would share their research freely, even with countries they were fighting. One story particularly caught the admiral's attention. During a war between two human nations, an earthquake had destroyed several cities in one country. The enemy nation had immediately sent rescue teams, medical supplies, and emergency food. The war had continued afterward, but both sides had worked together during the disaster. "Why did they help their enemies?" he asked his staff. "Our analysis suggests they do not view other humans as true enemies," replied the intelligence officer. "They may fight over territory or resources, but they see all humans as fundamentally the same as themselves." Admiral studied more examples. Humans had created organizations dedicated to helping people in other countries during emergencies. They had doctors who traveled to dangerous areas just to provide medical care to strangers. They had teachers who went to poor regions to educate children they would never see again. "Computer, compare human behavior to the other 17 species we have conquered." The comparison was startling. Every other species had shown some capacity for cooperation within their own groups, but none had consistently helped outsiders without expecting something in return. Most species had clear hierarchies where stronger individuals dominated weaker ones. Many had evolved competitive cultures where individual success was the highest value. "The humans are different," he said to himself. "They evolved cooperation as their primary survival strategy." Admiral decided to test this theory. He ordered his scientists to analyze human biology and psychology more carefully. What they found confirmed his suspicions. "Sir, humans are remarkably weak as individual organisms," reported the chief scientist. "They have no natural weapons, no armor, no unusual physical abilities. Most predators on their planet could easily kill a single human." "Then how did they become the dominant species?" "Through cooperation, sir. They developed complex social structures that allowed them to work together in large groups. They could communicate detailed plans, share knowledge across generations, and coordinate activities across vast distances. The admiral studied diagrams of human brain structure. Their brains had enlarged areas dedicated to social thinking, emotional recognition, and communication. They had evolved to understand each other's needs and work together effectively. But, sir, there is something else, the scientist continued. Humans appear to have extended their cooperation instincts beyond their own species. They form emotional bonds with other animals, care for plants, and even try to protect their planet's environment. This was unprecedented. No other species that had encountered showed concern for non-intelligent life forms or their environment as a moral principle. Admiral A requested more detailed studies of human social behavior. He wanted to understand how this unusual psychology affected their response to invasion. Computer, analyze human behavior during previous catastrophes on their planet. The results showed consistent patterns. When faced with disasters that threatened everyone equally, humans would put aside their conflicts and work together. They would share resources, coordinate rescue efforts, and help strangers without considering the cost to themselves. Sir, look at this example. One officer highlighted a historical event. A volcano erupted on an island, threatening all the inhabitants. Humans from around the world sent ships, aircraft, and supplies to evacuate everyone. They spent enormous resources to save people they had never met. Did they gain anything from this rescue? Asked the admiral. Nothing material, sir. Most of the rescued people had no way to repay their rescuers. The humans simply felt obligated to help. Admiral A began to understand why the invasion was not proceeding as planned. The strategy was based on the assumption that intelligent species would choose individual survival over group loyalty when faced with overwhelming force. But humans seemed to have the opposite instinct. "Show me their response to our ultimatum," he ordered. The computer displayed the global communications during the 48-hour deadline. Human leaders had debated surrender, but the conversations revealed something important. They were not primarily concerned with saving themselves or their own nations. They were worried about what would happen to other humans under rule. Messages between human leaders showed them sharing information about treatment of conquered species. They were coordinating plans to protect civilian populations. Many had refused to surrender because they believed resistance would buy time for others to escape or hide. They are not fighting for victory, the admiral realized. They are fighting to protect each other. This changed everything. Military doctrine was based on defeating enemy forces and then accepting surrender from the civilian population. But if humans refused to abandon each other, traditional conquest strategies might not work. Admiral A called for detailed files on all previous conquests. He wanted to compare those species to humanity. The files painted a clear picture. In every previous conquest, there had come a moment when the enemy leadership calculated that continued resistance would result in total destruction. At that point, they would negotiate surrender terms that preserved some of their population and resources. But humans seemed incapable of making this calculation. Their leadership was not thinking in terms of acceptable losses or strategic retreat. They were thinking about how to save as many people as possible, regardless of the cost to themselves. "Sir, we have intercepted another transmission from the human leaders," reported the communications officer. Admiral A listened to the message. It was from a human military commander to his troops. "We may not be able to win this war, but we can make sure that future generations remember what it means to be human. We protect each other. We take care of each other. We do not abandon each other, even when it would be easier to give up." For the first time in his long military career, Admiral A felt something he had never experienced before: doubt about what the Empire was doing. Admiral A was reviewing tactical reports when the emergency alert came in. A scout ship had crashed in a human city during a routine patrol. The ship had been carrying young cadets on a training mission when its engines failed. "Sir, the crashed ship is in an area still controlled by human forces," reported the rescue coordinator. "We can send a recovery team, but they will face significant resistance." The admiral studied the location on his tactical display. The ship had come down in what humans called a residential area, filled with civilian homes and schools. Human military forces in the area would certainly try to capture any survivors for interrogation. "Prepare the rescue operation," he ordered. "But first, show me what is happening at the crash site." The main screen switched to a live view from surveillance satellites. The admiral expected to see human soldiers surrounding the crashed ship, preparing to extract prisoners. Instead, he saw something that made him lean forward in surprise. Human emergency workers were climbing into the wreckage. They had brought medical equipment, cutting tools, and rescue devices. They were trying to free the trapped cadets from the damaged ship. "Why are they not taking prisoners?" asked the tactical officer. Admiral watched carefully. The human rescuers were working with intense focus and skill. They had identified where the young were trapped and were cutting through the twisted metal to reach them. One human was even crawling through a dangerous gap in the wreckage to get medical supplies to an injured cadet. "Sir, our passive scans show that several of the cadets are seriously injured," reported the medical officer. "Without immediate treatment, they will die." On the screen, human medical teams were setting up an emergency treatment area outside the crashed ship. As each young was pulled from the wreckage, human doctors began treating their injuries immediately. The admiral had seen enough battlefields to recognize professional medical work. These humans were not just providing basic first aid. They were performing complex emergency procedures to save alien lives, using equipment designed for human physiology but adapted on the spot for biology. "Sir, one of the cadets is conscious," reported the communications officer. "We are receiving his emergency transmissions." "Put him on the speakers," the admiral ordered. The voice that came through was young and frightened, speaking in the language. "Admiral, the humans are helping us. They do not speak our language, but they are trying to heal our injuries. One of their doctors has been working on my friend for an hour. She will not give up." Admiral felt something strange in his chest. These were his people's children, and humans were risking their own lives to save them. "Are they questioning you?" he asked through the communicator. "No, sir. They just keep asking if we are in pain and if they can do anything to help. A human female brought food and water for those of us who can eat. She smiled at me, even though she probably thinks I am her enemy." The admiral switched to visual monitoring of the area around the crash site. What he saw there affected him even more deeply than the rescue operation. A human woman, probably in her 30s, was sitting near the emergency treatment area. She had several young human children with her, but she also had 2 young cadets who had already been treated for minor injuries. The woman was singing something in the human language. The admiral's translation systems identified it as a lullaby, a song humans sang to comfort their children, but she was singing to both human and young together. "Computer, analyze this woman's background," he ordered quietly. The information appeared on his personal screen. The woman's name was Sarah. She was a teacher at a local human school. Her own home had been destroyed in the invasion 3 days earlier, but she had been organizing care for children whose parents were missing or dead. Admiral watched as Sarah gently cleaned a cut on a young's face. The alien child was scared and confused, but the human woman's calm voice and careful touch seemed to comfort him. She was treating this enemy child exactly the same way she treated the human children in her care. "Sir, the rescue operation is complete," reported the operations officer. "All 8 cadets have been saved. The humans are requesting permission to transport the injured ones to their medical facilities for better treatment." The admiral stared at the screen. In 400 years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. An enemy force was offering to provide extended medical care for his soldiers' children, asking for nothing in return. He thought about his own career, about all the worlds he had conquered, about all the species that now served the Empire. When had anyone ever treated captured with such care? When had his own people ever shown such compassion to enemy young? "Sir, are you all right?" asked Commander, noticing the Admiral's silence. Admiral was not all right. He was thinking about his own childhood, about the values he had been taught. Strength, courage, loyalty to the Empire. These were good values, but watching the human woman sing to frightened children made him realize something was missing. "Computer, show me records of behavior toward conquered populations," he said quietly. The files appeared on his screen. The Admiral had seen these reports many times before, but now he read them with different eyes. They were not cruel conquerors, but they were efficient ones. Conquered populations were relocated as needed, resources were allocated for maximum productivity, and resistance was discouraged through demonstrations of power. But nowhere in the files could he find examples of soldiers comforting enemy children. Nowhere did he see his people going out of their way to help those who could not help themselves. The Empire was successful, but it was also cold. "Admiral," came the voice of the young cadet through the communicator. "The human doctor says I will recover completely. She seems happy about this, even though I am supposed to be her enemy. Why do they care so much about us?" The question hit Admiral like a physical blow. Why indeed? What had the Empire become during its centuries of expansion? When had they stopped caring about the suffering of others? He looked at the screen again. Sarah was now helping both human and children eat from bowls of simple food. She was treating them all as if they were her own family. She had lost her home to the invasion, but she was still taking care of enemy children. For the first time in his long life, Admiral felt tears forming in his eyes. They had advanced technology, powerful weapons, and control over 17 star systems. But they had lost something that these humans still possessed: the ability to see others as deserving of care and protection. "Sir," Commander was looking at him with concern. "Send a message to all ships," Admiral said, his voice thick with emotion. "Cease all offensive operations immediately. Prepare for full withdrawal from this system." "Sir, I do not understand. We have overwhelming military superiority. We can complete this conquest within days." The Admiral looked at his younger officer, remembering when he himself had thought that way. "Commander, what do you think makes a civilization truly powerful?" "Advanced technology, sir. Superior weapons, efficient organization." "I used to believe that too," Admiral said sadly, "but I was wrong. Watch that human woman again. Look at how she treats those children." On the screen, Sarah was now reading a story from a book, using simple gestures to help the young understand the human words. All the children, human and alien alike, were listening with complete attention. "She has lost everything," the Admiral continued. "Her home is destroyed, her world is under attack, and she has no reason to trust us. But she still chooses to care for our young. That is real strength, Commander. That is true civilization." The Admiral activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice would reach every ship in the system. "All units, this is Admiral. We are ending our operations on this planet. Prepare for immediate departure. Leave behind all medical supplies and repair equipment that the humans can use." "Sir, the Empire will demand an explanation," warned. Admiral nodded. He would have to explain to his superiors why he had abandoned a successful conquest, but he knew exactly what he would tell them. "I will report that we encountered a species that has mastered something we lost long ago," he said. "They understand what it truly means to be civilized. We came here to teach them how to be strong, but they taught us what we had forgotten about being human." The Admiral paused, realizing what he had just said. What we had forgotten about being people, he corrected himself softly. As the fleet prepared to leave Earth's solar system, Admiral A made one final log entry. Personal note: today I learned that true power is not the ability to conquer others. True power is the choice to protect others when you have every reason to protect only yourself. The humans have this power. We do not. Until we learn what they know about compassion, we are the primitive species. On the surface of Earth, Sarah continued singing to the children under her care, unaware that her simple act of kindness had changed the course of galactic history.